Alice Megan spoke me on this because are you a PSVR reviewer? Yeah. So it's on the list of people okay. So the Nokia is
we have remote viewers.
I started the record in 24 years ago. I'm so I figure if it's still there after she steps down, it's still there after I step down.
Yeah, okay, friends, let's get started. We only have 90 minutes, and there's a bunch of things to talk about. The blue sheets are going around. Sarah and Taylor are going to be taking notes. I assume you guys are going to be using Etherpad? Sarah, is that your plan too? Oh, already there. Okay, great.
Okay, so welcome again. This is me, Jayadajam Sharkar, with my chair, Aaron. So let's start the TAPS IETF 106 session. Not well. I think you have been already familiar. If not, please read it out and maintain. Yeah, but you have some links there. You can click and you can read and you leisure time. So this is the agenda. So we have some issues review. I think we'll go through the GitHub, and then we have like Brian talking about TAPS architecture and interfaces, and then Tommy will be on the implementation. So there will be updates. Then we have one IETF last call. We got some comments that we'd like to converse to some conclusion what to do. I think where our ADs has asked us to also like try to resolve the try to come up with a solution like how to resolve the issues. And then we'll have some discussion on the milestones because we have a couple of milestones due and we have some plans for that one. Document status, as I said, there was like one document on the IETF last call, so we have gone on AD follow-up stage, and we have Philip doing the shepherding. Thanks for doing it. And I think you have quite a good experience of how it looks like. Is this our first shepherding of document? Yeah. Okay, so that's a good experience. And then there was a plan interim, but we canceled it because we didn't find much of things to discuss. So we said like, yeah, let's meet on this meeting. And here is how it looks like the milestones. So we have like 2 dues. And I think, Aaron, we have a proposal that you'd like to tell people about.
Yes. So let's go on to the next slide. Sorry, I got this. Okay, next slide. So, like I said there's not a next slide. Oh, you didn't update the slides. That's interesting. Okay. It's a surprise. Hold on a second. You know what? We'll come back to this at the end. Basically, I drafted a schedule to get us from here to March with getting working group last call for the 3 drafts, with some notional weeks for calls and timeframes for doing working group last calls. And so ideally I want people, the authors and such, to look at their calendars and see if they could support the schedule, get a commitment from folks, and we will... hold on a second. I think...
Hi, Gary first. I found the room, and yes.
I beg your pardon?
Gary first. I found the room, and yes, I commit to this. This is a good
All right,
thing.
Gory's in. That doesn't matter. He's in. It's that much more meaningful. I've got the slide on my laptop here. Hold on. That is an excellent question.
Because we haven't done this so far.
Okay, oops, here we go. Okay, so here it is. It's kind of aggressive. The basic structure is We try to do a working group last call for a different document each month, starting with the most mature, right? So we go Arch, then interface, then implementation. Then in the subsequent month, we figure that there's going to be stuff that comes out of the last call. We have to do a rev, right? And so in December, we work in group last call Arch. Then in January, we rev it. In January, we work in group last call interface. In February, we rev it. Again, in implementation in February. And then we rev it for March. And then we do an interim call. So this is, I guess I need a little bit of feedback from the community. Is like, well, should we do the call, you know?
Oh, no, yeah. The interim call is ridiculous.
What? What's wrong with the call? I mean, assuming we will have stuff to talk about, otherwise we would be done now.
So I'm gonna disagree with Gory. I'm strongly in favor of the interim call. I think this is the right number of them. I think we probably need to doodle this because January 13th is not great for me, and February 10th I'm not going to show up at because this is not as interesting as the mountains are. And I haven't checked March 23rd yet, but I think it's okay. Wait, when do we
March
actually?
23rd
Oh
is
no!
the
Oh, March
IETF.
23rd is the IETF. Yeah,
So you're
I'll
busy
be
that
there.
week,
Yeah.
But okay. So well, what I wanted to do was pick a week and then doodle within the week, so that we don't have to try to pick from across the whole month. And so, can we try to narrow that down now? Like, so December 16th. Does anybody have a problem with December 16th? Considering that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So I like the idea of the calls.
Okay.
I understand the January, February, March ones because those are after working group last calls when we've presumably received comments. I don't understand the point of the first one. If we haven't started a call, what's the agenda for that?
It's for things that we don't get resolved here today.
Okay.
That might have to go into the other documents that are not yet in last call. It's like we don't have to only discuss the documents that have been last called in our interim meetings, right? We can talk about the other documents if there's stuff that's unresolved. So they're kind of placeholders for now, but that's one of the things I wanted feedback on.
Aaron, I just wondered whether they're actually one out of sync. Whether if we do architecture working group last call and we try and revise it and we try and get good text, we probably have it ready for about January the 13th or so. And if we do implementation, we do working group last call in February, then February...
Wait. So before you go on, I don't understand the first thing you said.
Yeah.
So say it again.
So I think the first, okay, I may be thinking exactly the same as Tommy, but I'm just not got it in my head yet. But I think the architecture call needs to be in January. After we do a working group last call, we get some feedback. We've done a detailed read through with our brains resynced. And it's kind of almost there, but we just need to get it there. And then the next one there, so the one at the beginning seems to be like before we've got this processing step.
Right.
And then there's going to have to be one in March.
Right. So that you are making the same comment that Tommy did.
Am I?
Let me try to make the same point that I made to
sit down and stop.
No. Let me make, because I don't understand if you have an objection yet. So let me try to explain my thinking. The thinking is that the interim calls are not just to discuss last call comments, but they're to discuss open issues for documents that have not yet gone into last call. The idea is to have a more frequent cadence than IETF meetings for us to talk about things that are unresolved, right? It doesn't have to be to respond to last call comments.
Let me be a little bit more blunt. I think that the January 13th meeting is for the last call. The February 10th meeting is for the last call. The December 16th meeting is a forcing function to make sure that we actually get off our butts and do the work. Because we're going to assign a bunch of issues today. And we're going to make them due for that call, where that needs and it's probably better to have a call so that you have to so that we yell at each other for not having actually done the work. That's what that calls for.
Thank you. Yes.
I know you didn't want to say that as chair because that sounds kind of like you're like, psh, but I'll say it.
Well, but when you look at the calendar, right after December 16th, it becomes January 1st very quickly, right?
Yes, it does.
And so then there's 2 weeks before the next call, and in that time period, we are doing an interface working group last call. So we got to basically get those first 2 documents done in the next few work weeks.
Can I propose extremely selfishly that we push the January call 1 week and that we push the February call 1 week? So because I can't make the February call, the January call I could make either of those 2 weeks, but that also gives us the ability for those of us in, who live in countries with like reasonable holiday schedules, who actually do take time off over Christmas. Like a lot of us don't come back until the 6th, right? Like we disappear on the 20 mumble and we come back on the 6th.
I mean, you're not working on these documents on your vacation?
I can put you in touch with my family about that one. They might be awake. You want me to call?
So I'm not seeing anybody else standing up at the microphone. Have other people sort of thought about their calendars and whether you guys can support this? Like people who might be starting a new job or something? Teresa.
Teresa Enghardt, I think I can do this, yeah.
Anna, you're author on the implementation document. Do you want to speak up on this before we... It sounds like we've got kind of a consensus on it. Or you could do it in Jabber if somebody's looking at Jabber. There she is. There's a button somewhere.
Yes, hi. Just trying to check my calendar. So the February 17 week is actually difficult for me.
Is the whole week blocked? I think that we're running out of weeks in February if we try to avoid Brian's.
Actually, the whole week is a bit difficult.
So we started with February 10th, and we ruled that out, and February 17th, and we rolled that out. So we can go earlier or later, I suppose. So the week of the 20th.
The week of the 3rd is the quick interim, so that's a no for me. The week of the 24th, I'm running a thing in Zurich, so it's also a no. So I don't think we're going to find a week that's going to work for both Anna and I. If we're talking about the interface provisions, they're more important for everybody. It's true.
No. This is the February was where we talk about the interface provisions. It's more important that you be there.
Oh, right, because Temple, WDLC, so okay, then I win. Yeah, by which I mean I lose.
If the Friday in week of February 17 is an option, that would be possible.
Sure. Okay. All right. Why don't we just? I'm going to jot that down while we have folks. Yeah, but we've done that before. I think that there's one time window that seems to work for from Zurich to San Mateo. Okay. Whatever. U.S. West Coast. Any other loud gripes about this schedule here so we can move on? This is one of these things where it's much easier to do it face-to-face than to try to do it online. All right, then. Okay, Gori. These are weeks, and we're going to doodle, except for, we'll do the time for the last one, but we're going to do a doodle for the day on the mailing list.
So I guess the minutes only need to say we're going to doodle for them, really. Okay, Gori Fairhurst. I really like the idea of the schedule of pushing and getting the arch done, pushing getting the interface done. I'm slightly hesitant that implementation will arrive in February. From previous experience, just nothing to do with the maturity of it, but to do with the type of month it is. I've always had problems with February, personally. It's been slightly shorter than I'd expected, and people stick one thing in the middle, and the whole thing's gone.
I understand Brexit.
It's one day longer. We're fixed. Yeah. So, would you be really upset if we thought when we get to February whether we prioritise finishing int and arch over the other ones?
I would, for all these things, I would prioritize completion over moving on, because I want to get to completion. And unless we've got like some interlocking thing where we want to get the implementation experience and feed it back in, I would definitely agree that would be the way to go. So we can figure that out in February.
Yeah. There's not a big dependency, but the implementation stuff can just follow because it's just a matter of writing great text.
All right. I think this is close enough, and we'll find out what reality is what it is. Okay, now we need to switch the monitors again so we can get back to the slides.
Yeah, I think we have uploaded at the updated agenda there.
Oh yeah. We gonna do the hackathon next, or we?
I'm sorry, can I bash the agenda a bit and suggest we start with security, because I have comments on architecture that kind of depend on security.
It's fine with me. So the plan was to do 30 minutes on security.
Yes. So
we can do the hackathon then.
can we comment a little more on this schedule you had?
Well, at the expense of actually talking about technical stuff, sure.
I realized it was a little late, but yeah. So Colin Perkins, that to me seems aggressive.
It's intentionally aggressive.
Yes, I would suggest too aggressive. Okay.
I mean, at some point, our students are going to graduate and disappear, among other things. And also, we've been sort of working on these documents for a couple of years now. So we should finish them. I mean, let me put it this way: we're making up for some lack of aggressiveness over the past couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. If all I'm suggesting is if you want certain of the authors to read the documents and comment sensibly, and that time frame is too aggressive.
Okay, I hear you.
So Philip Teasel directly commenting on that. I think the schedule is aggressive, but doable at least for interface and architecture. I don't believe it. I think it's too aggressive for implementation, but we can at least try to get close to it.
Right. Brian?
So to aggressiveness on like as a I forget, I'm an editor of which of these, architecture and interface, right? Yeah, both. Cool. Okay. So with my editor hat on for those two documents, I intend sort of generation of text to working group last call for architecture to be, if there's an open issue on architecture that we can't find somebody to put text in today, it's closed it's closed unresolved. It's like won't fix. Like nobody cares enough to do it. We're not going to do it. For interface, if we can't find people kind of by that December 16th call who are willing to commit, we're going to type text over Christmas. Then it's like, hey, it was a neat idea. It was cool. We probably should have done something about it, but we got to move on, right? Like, so the perfect is the enemy of the good. And what mirroring thing? Oh yeah, so we can actually see what's going on. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's how I intend to run this with my editor hat on. Is we're closing stuff. It's like the train is leaving the station because we've had a year of not doing anything.
Exactly.
I would like to be done.
I think I can't tell. Is Anna waiting to? Oh, now I cut her off. Sorry, Anna. Get back in line if you wanted to say something. I thought you were in the queue. I think so.
We are doing the hackathon report, then the security thing, and then the issues.
Right. X, yeah. I think I got your slides here. No. Yes. Here you go. Oh.
Thanks.
Can you do it 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So hi guys, Max Frankert from TU Berlin, and I'm just going to talk about our PyTabs implementation and mostly what we did at the hackathon. So since Prague, basically what we added are protocol and remote endpoint racing and framers. That are the big things that have been added. Interface selection is almost done, I think, and we're still hopefully going to add quick at some point. So the framers that are in our implementation now are a bit different from the ones that are specified, well, not specified, that are an example in interface implementation, sorry, not interface. And the main difference is that they frame message when they arrive instead of when the application call is received. That for us was just the choice to make, but that's all not that interesting. And it can do much more than just transform messages, obviously. So thanks to Jake, we also have multicast support in tabs, so we can receive SSM multicast streams. So until Saturday, or until today, actually, we thought we wouldn't need anything in API. Now, Michael when we had discussion on the open pull request, that we might actually do something, do need something in API. But yeah, there's an open pull request by Jake about how to do multicast for now. And the way we do it is that the local endpoint, if it is a group address on the local endpoint, then we just assume it's multicast. Then we require the application to specify in the transport properties that it is a unicast receive, a unidirectional receive. And then we, on a listen call, we then send out a join request and the application gets multicast packets. And if it's trying to initiate, it will throw an error. Right. So I guess the question would be if there's discussion on multicast, probably issues. Yeah, that's something. The next thing.
Can I just ask a very quick question?
Yeah.
What happens if there's only one source in an ASM? Is that counted for? Like I want to start an ASM group, but because I'm using the ASM model, but I only have one source. That's also okay? As in, ASM and SSM are restrict the number of sources, but I also have single source ASM groups.
But
so I can't just choose it because I have only one source. Is that Jake talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the proposed text, regardless of whether there's one source or not, you would be joining the group using an ASM join, and therefore if the packets do get routed somehow to you, then they would be, so if somebody else sends to that ASM group, you would receive it. If you are, if you join with an ASM group, it may be that this couples two things together that should not be coupled together.
Thank you. That's enough input. I can now look at the text.
Hi, Colin Perkins. Just to clarify, is with this API, is it possible to send without joining a group?
You can. Well, the join isn't explicit. It's implicit. So if you have a multicast group as a local address, then the tabs system will send the join.
Okay, there have been implementations of multicast that send without joining.
Okay. Okay.
Right, Jake again. The send doesn't require anything. This is not a multicast operation. This is simply a send to a remote endpoint that has a group address. There's nothing different about that than ordinary UDP. For this is restricted to the receive.
Yeah. Oh, okay, as long as it's possible to send to a group without joining.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you can send to a group.
The other thing, and it's been a long time since I thought about multicast, so maybe I'm misremembering. There was some sort of source filtering features in some versions of multicast. Are they supported?
That's SSM, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got the right flexibility to handle all the different filtering. And
yeah. If there's a remote endpoint, then you filter by those addresses, basically.
Okay, I'm not sure that was only SSM, but maybe I'm misremembering. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nobody uses that. Okay. As far as I'm aware, I've never heard. I did ask around. I've never heard of anybody using it. It's like theoretically possible in the specs. I would be shocked if it worked. But generally, like, okay, so on the endpoints today, if you try to do a normal socket and issue the sock op that you set, your options are to do an SSM join or to do an ASM join, and you do it by setting a sock opt and providing the MREC or the what's the other one called? MREC S or something, I forget. But those are the only options that a normal host has today. So in the same sense, this API only provides those operations. To do something different, you're going to have to like construct an IGMP packet that does something funny.
Okay, that's fine. We should just document that. That's
Okay.
Those features are not expected to work, and we're not supposed
Okay.
to.
Right. Okay. So that was the multicast, or maybe part of it. What we implemented at the hackathon, Jake has a protocol right now, a draft for a protocol called AMBI, which is a way to check the integrity of multicast packets, which creates an out-of-band TLS connection along the multicast receive. So we implemented it as a framer. And what we're doing is that on the start initialization of the multicast connection object, the framer also creates a TLS connection. So there's two connections. One is inside the framer and one is the connection exposed to the application. And then anytime a packet arrives, a multicast packet arrives, the framer gets manifest all the time from the MB generator, from the MB manifest generator, and then it checks if the hash for that specific multicast packet is in the manifest, and if it is, it just returns the message itself, like the multicast message. It doesn't do anything to the message. So the question kind of is this a legitimate use of a framer? Because right now the text mostly says encapsulation, encoding, and message transformation, but it doesn't do any of that. It takes the message as it comes in and puts the same message out. So if it should be a legitimate framer, maybe add something to text like also analyze or just change something about the text to make it clear that this is a legitimate use. And if it isn't, I'm not sure why it shouldn't be, basically.
Tommy, Polly, Apple. So, I mean, I'm not sure how we gauge legitimate. Having framers in our implementation, I have definitely done essentially the same thing. Yeah. It is like once you have that shape of thing, it's very easy to do and it's very natural to do that. So, yeah, I think it is a natural outcome, and I don't think we should prohibit it. I don't know if we need. Are you proposing text for talking about that use case, or are we just going to let it kind of happen?
Right. I'm not sure, like, if it's because it's not encapsulation, encoding, or transformation. So, and that's like the things that get mentioned. So maybe add like something like analyze or something to do the packets, because it maybe make it more clear that you don't actually have to do anything with the packet.
If we can have some text to just say,
sure.
To include that use case, that would be good to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, and that's right. No, that's not it. We also like thought about right now in the API. It says like the framer object gets created once on the pre-connection, and then it's also added on the pre-connection, but it's not right clear what happens if you call listen, because then you only have one framer object, but the listen can spawn many connections, and there would like the listener wouldn't really have an option to create new framer objects itself, right? Because it doesn't necessarily know how to create them. Right, but how does it get them? Like in the API, probably something in interface, in implementation to like explain how to do it. Yeah, and that's basically it. That's the links and thanks.
Hi, Colin Perkins. I wonder that we don't have very different views of what framers are. Because
magic.
To me, a framer is a much simpler thing than that, and maybe I'm in the rough on what the consensus is. But, I thought it was parsing and serialization.
Who said the architecture document was done?
Well, this is why I said I'm not. I thought it was too aggressive, but.
Tommy, Polly. So I think if you look at what the architecture does say for framer, it is certainly smaller and a tighter definition of it. And we have moved all of the implementation details into the implementation document. So even the interface is the thing I think that Colin is thinking of, the simpler version. To your point, when you are playing with these, you realize you can do more with it, and it's an expansion point. Yes. So I think once you start using it that way, it potentially goes beyond the notion that we have in the architecture of a framer. So I would prefer to leave the definition constrained, because that's all you need to do. And I think these other use cases end up being maybe some other doctrine of how to describe using them, but it's not really part of it's an outcome of the way we build them more than a fundamental property.
So yeah, mostly that. I'll answer the first question up here. Is this a legitimate use of framers? It doesn't matter, right? Like, so the architecture document is designed to be sort of a framework for understanding the interface. The interface document is designed to be as abstract as possible. The fact that framers are kind of the only real bit of implementer accessible extensibility that we've put into the architecture, because we need it because of how framing and deframing works with a message-based thing on top of stream-based protocols. You can't get away from it. It's going to be where all of the I don't want to say abuse happens, but the creative use, innovation, abuse, innovation, same. It's going to be where all the innovation happens. So, like, is it a legitimate use of framers? Who cares, right? Okay. I mean, thank you for asking the question, but you're also the one with your hands on the keyboard, so like, right? Running code trumps rough consensus every time. Cool, thanks.
Colin Puggins, I think we care a little to the extent that if there are going to be other extension points, we should probably hint that there are likely to be such things rather than forcing everyone from the beginning to clutch things into the architecture. Saying we know this is incomplete and we expect implementations to grow additional stuff in the middle, which is not necessarily framers, but perhaps looks a little bit like them if you squint, but we expect this to evolve. Would be a useful thing to say rather than just saying, yeah, it's a framer, when we know it's not really. It's a sort of clutched extension that happens to fit in if you squint a bit.
Yeah. Philip Teasel, I would like to add upon this and say, I think it would really be helpful to add at some points in the document where we see the extension points. I think everyone should go about this and make pull requests for that. And explicitly see that, for example, framers, there could be an extension point saying that framers allow certain protocol transformations, and there would be a way to annotate that. I think it doesn't have to be in the first revision, but at least having this kind of, there could be this point be added later on, makes sense.
Thanks, Max. We're all talking about pull requests for the architecture document, right? Not head nod? No? All right. Okay. Or interface. Okay. So we're going to talk about the security document next, right? Hold on. We have Anna wants to say something.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to add, I think for the architecture draft, we should avoid putting too much details into that one and keep it on the concept level.
You have a whole room full of thumbs up agreeing with you, Anna.
Okay, good, because this is actually something I noticed also when I read it the last time, that maybe, if anything, maybe we have a few too much details in there, because whenever something new feature got added, there was a tendency we want to mention it in the architecture draft, but maybe that is not necessary. So yes, good, but then we all agree.
Okay, thank you. So we have 56 minutes left in the session. Philip, how much time do you think you'll need? Since we want to go through the
less
issues.
Than 30 minutes, and depending on the discussion, maybe also less than 15 minutes.
Okay, so maybe let's try to keep the discussion on point so that we can sort of try to get a plan together for our now aggressive schedule.
Yeah, so I'm speaking here at the shepherd of the document, and in the last months we had a working group last call. We did. I did the shepherd write-up. The AD review was done. We got reviews from Gennard and Sekjes saying the document is ready. We got a Jana review, okay, and then we got it should not be published in its current form from two. Should not be published in its should not be published in its current form. By EKR and Christian Hüttemer. And this is the reason why we're discussing this here. let's wrap up what the criticism roughly was. So first, it started with this general skepticism against the TAPS idea, so too ambitious, pushes against implementation trends like Quick is really integrating everything in the application, while TAPS is trying to move that out again to replace, make transports replaceable. No matter what this is, I think we need to briefly make up our minds whether we really want to iterate this argument over and over again, or whether we say, okay, this is an approach to do these things. It might work, it might fail. We just want to make the documents for if it works.
So on this point, I would buy that argument a whole lot more if like Quick wasn't actually turning ALPN into a protocol stack identifier. So like I think we can too ambitious task. Yeah, we had a couple of BOFs about this. The first one was harder than the second one. It's a chartered working group.
So if we're going to have a line of people arguing with Ecker and Christian who aren't in the room, I'm not sure that's productive.
Yeah, it's probably not. I'm just saying, I think that we can safely move on to criticism too.
I agree, basically. Kyle Rose, Akamai. I think the criticism against an API that some people might not want to use is it's something that will be solved by whether people use it or not, right? When it comes to security or safety, I think those criticisms are warranted, and I'm guessing that's what criticism 2 is, and I think that's where we should focus our effort.
Yeah, Tommy Pauly, definitely agree on that. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you were in line before Magnus. Tom.
There you go. Sorry, Magnus. So just to cut to the chase a little bit for people in the room, we have published a new rev. I'm sure you're about to get to this. Yep. I think potentially, as we go through these things, I want to validate that this revision that we have done, the group thinks is a good idea, but also that we think it addresses some of these things. So just to kind of like briefly quote from that, what we've clarified now in like a non-goal section is to say, it is not a goal to allow software implementations to automatically switch between different security protocols. To essentially say the scope of our tapsification of racing things is not applying to the security aspects. And hopefully this does address this concern. It's saying we're not touching your stuff.
Okay, Magnus.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to, make clear. From as an AD here in this perspective, I just think that you need to, it's fine to push back against criticisms and with the argument saying, yes, this is our task, what we have as been charged to do, etc. And of course, there's people who hasn't been involved or maybe was at the BOF and didn't like the outcome of it, etc. And that's not, I think, what you should discuss. It's, as Tom is just stated, is like, okay, clarify a bit the scope when it helps, that's good, but otherwise it's fine to push back. That's just what I want to say. So we don't need to, you need to comment and answer things, but you don't need to address necessarily. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and great t-shirt.
So moving on to the second criticism, first, security protocols are special, and saying security must be must be integrated deeply into the application and must not be automated or erased in the tab system. I think with your revision, you already addressed the second point. My personal opinion is, you could also have argued that there are use cases for that, but that's the choice of the authors, and I can definitely say it's a valuable choice. And transport and network security are fundamentally different. Yeah, somehow they have to be integrated somewhere. And with tabs, we are acknowledging that they're part of the stack, and that they're not always somewhere outside the stack and some special add-ons. Historically, they have been. but I think the time that we can go without is over, and therefore TAPS has to integrate that. And I think at least for my read of your changes, you're addressing these points pretty clearly, and I would just ask the room whether there's different opinions on that.
Kyle Rose, Akamai. So I don't know how many people read the new draft, but we added a goals and non-goals section at the beginning, and I don't know if it was the non-goal, but a non-goal was to race different security protocols or assume that a security protocol, any security protocol that a TAP system might choose would provide some magic, fairy dust or whatnot that would make your application magically secure. We're instead making it clear that we need applications rather, to explicitly choose a security protocol that that fulfills their requirements as far as security goes, right? So we're making it much clearer than I think the doc was before, that we're not trying to race these security protocols against each other.
Having this now, the question is whether this needs reflection in the interface draft later. I don't want to discuss this now, but I just want to put this on the stack for the issue discussion. So the other criticism is its security work outside this SEC area. I can definitely say yes, it is somehow, but what other choices do we have? So asking another area to just do the work for us is just difficult. And therefore, I think we have enough expertise, and it makes sense to say, okay, we did this in the other scope. Perhaps we should have consulted them more, but I think it's not really a point for long discussion now.
Theresa Enghart, as an author, so I think this criticism mostly applied to us giving very detailed descriptions of the security protocols and like cryptographic details, and we chose to basically delete these from the draft because it was giving the impression that we were trying to give like a comprehensive security analysis of these protocols, and we chose that we will not attempt to make this comprehensive analysis, but instead applications that choose a protocol have to go back and read like the original RFC or whatever documentation of the security protocol, and then make a conscious choice of what the security properties are, and be aware of the limitations. And we cannot do this for like a number of security protocols in this one draft. And so we took this out, and so I think this should address the comments.
Spencer, I think Magnus may have been in front of you.
All his life.
Yeah, so, but I don't see a problem. I mean, working groups outside of security area obviously need to work on security related to the protocols, etc. So it's don't take that first order thing. I think, and I think Theresa's comments maybe is more spot on for what the issue was here. So, and I haven't read the new version yet, so I haven't figured out if you removed too much or not. But let's see.
Okay. Did you have more? Oh, guess not. Spencer?
Spencer Dawkins. And what Teresa said about pulling out the detailed descriptions is brilliant, because it was not super easy for the transport people to agree on the transport trade-offs back and characterizations and trade-offs and things like that back in the day when TAPS was starting. So that's the right answer. Having said that, former area directors can be blunt. This is chartered work, and it was discussed within the ISG when I chartered it. Period.
Thank you, Spencer. Chris?
Yeah, Chris Wood. I think we resolved this by just removing basically all of the fluff from the document, and I think we can just move forward with the new stuff. I'd also like to comment, like similar to what Magnus said, like quick is arguably probably should have been done maybe in the security area, but it's been done in transport.
So there. That's moving right along.
Okay. Yeah. The last criticism is that the document is a mixed bag of things, which is somehow true. For transport, so for Minset, this was a split of documents. Now it's one document. I think if we get more criticism on that, we might want to change, or we might want to decide to split the document again. But as now for the rework, most of the security analysis or security feature spotting has been removed. I don't see the reason for that anymore.
And to clarify, that you're saying you don't see a reason to split them into separate documents. Okay, yeah, me neither. Please keep them in the same document and let's move it forward. Chris Wood, sorry.
Chris Wood. Okay, Gori Fairhurst. Exactly. One document, much better to have these together.
Okay. So I think we are out I'm out of discussion points, and we cleanly seem to agree that that the edits mostly at least try to address these issues. The question is, how do we continue? So
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Sorry, a quick chair interrupt here. So one of the roles of the shepherd is to work with commenters to get feedback on the resolution of their comments. So I think a typical next step would be for you to summarize, or maybe in collaboration with the authors, to summarize the changes, send a pointer to the new document to Christian and Ecker, allow them to respond to the changes, and then we work with our area director on making a decision on how to proceed after that. These are informative comments. We've responded to it. It sounds like people have given a lot of thought to making changes that are responsive to them. But I think that giving the commenter a chance to make sure that we understand their concerns correctly is typical.
Yes, thank you, Aaron, for that part. And I would also request, because of the rather large amount of changes, I would be glad if someone beyond the authors would actually review the new version and say, does this work for the working group, etc. Still, because
Great
of
suggestion. Can we get a volunteer? Brian has volunteered. Thank you, Brian.
The shepherd, I expect to.
Yeah. I don't have to volunteer anymore. I'm already volunteered for that.
Yes.
So, Tommy, probably. So what I wanted to ask the chairs is, due to this change, since we did go through working group last call, are we okay? Like, do we need to go through that again? Or are we okay essentially asking the whole working group to please review it as we are going forward with it and have specific people look at it?
Yeah, I think that,
Okay,
so this is, my sort of opinion as chair, and Zod can weigh in if he wants, is we've been in the working group last call, we've gotten that feedback. We've done IETF last call, we've gotten that feedback. It's like each time you incorporate feedback, you don't have to start back from square zero. So I think we're in a process of continuous refinement. I think we should make sure that the working group gets notice, like a summary of what the changes are, and can encourage them to give another look at it. We've got at least one committed reviewer, and so I think that's sufficient.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Now we are discussing here in this meeting, and then we have some volunteers looking on the changes. So I think we're fine.
Yeah, that sounds, Chris Wood, that sounds great. If this were just a reduction in content, we could just move it forward. Yeah. But because there's this new bit about what the interface is to applications, which is sort of different from what we had before, it's like rephrased a little bit differently. Having folks like Brian and particular others that worked on the implementation or the API draft would be really great. And having those reviews before we move forward with, for some definition, move forward would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
So from my perspective, you're gonna have basically 2 weeks to comment and review these changes, and I'm hoping that you manage to get feedback from Ecker and Christian in that time frame, because that's roughly where. I mean, I don't think we're going to have an ISG call within the next 2 weeks, and I think it's 2 weeks until it. So I will see how it looks next week, and then decide on when scheduling for the ISG.
Okay. So, these were non-blocking comments, right? There's not a discuss on the draft at this time. Is that right, Magnus?
No. This is IETF last call comments, and I need the story for I need to know that we have addressed or at least considered those comments, etc. And that's what we're doing now, and that's why we need to at least. I would like to see some feedback from Ecker and Christian on this, because they were the main people. Otherwise, I think you managed to address those, etc. But it's and therefore I also give the working group the time, because of the changes, to review this before it goes in front of the ISG and they make a decision. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Folks in the room, take a look at how much fun it is to shepherd one of these drafts, because we've got 3 more opportunities coming. Okay, so the next item is Brian and the open issue review. So we have labels, got it. Yes. Architecture. Is it a multiple select thing? Do I have to unselect? Yes, I do. All right. Okay. Well, we've been talking. I think Corey's got a guilty conscience.
While Brian's working out what he's doing, the change in the security document is kind of fairly large in terms of text change.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a new doc.
So, people in this room, have a look at it quickly to see whether it really is the same thing that we wanted. I think it probably is, but it'd be nice to have told the working group such. I think it says the same stuff. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying there's a lot of text change. We should look at it and give encouragement to the chair that we all support it.
It turns out it's been long enough since I've seen this thing that I forget it. So I'm just going to be looking at it with I'm not going to look at the change. I'm just going to look at the document with new eyes and figure out what the situation is. Yeah.
So, Brian, as we discussed on the list, my personal goal here is to make sure there's an owner for each of these to either drive it to closure or remove it altogether.
Great. So we have number 45. We're going to go with the oldest one first. Wow, 1-digit issues. Just came from Quick, so this is new. 2-digit issues still. Tommy, am I making you feel guilty enough to just go write the text for this? I think we know what we want to say. Yeah, click in it and actually see what we had a pretty long discussion about this.
It would also be nice to get
back in 2018
helping on some of these things. Right. So if we scroll down,
wow, this is referring to things that we added and then deleted.
Yeah. Can we scroll all the way down?
A lot of this is we're not going to do it. We're still not going to do it.
So we've already done
post London. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've already done various pull requests for it. We just never fully closed it.
Okay.
It looks like the last date we have on here is comments we had from our side meeting in March.
Yeah.
About just rewording. So I think this is something we can probably try to get done this week.
Okay.
Together.
Yeah, we'll sit down and do it.
Wordsmith it.
Can you assign me to this one as well? Go up to the top. Assignees. Click on assignees.
Click on
BRI. Trammel with 2 L's. Yeah. BritRam. Yeah, which is nope. Click it again. Click it again. Click it again. There we go. Good. Yes. Fine. Now click somewhere else. And it's going to take a while. And there you go. Okay. Computers. How do they work? Okay. Wow. This is not Buganizer. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah, then go back. This is stupid. Does anyone know how to go to the next issue or the previous issue in the list that you came from? Does Radar do this too? Just have go me through my issue? Yeah, okay. All right, you know what? I'll drive.
That's the right answer.
Yeah, right here. Look, yeah, there is no friggin' back. What the shit? All right, let's watch people learn how to use a Chromebook. All right. Chromebook. Wow, this is slow. Who built this operating system? Oh wait, no, I accidentally did API, and okay, this is like, oh, this is so painful. Can we actually plug my machine into the?
Go get your laptop.
Aaron's machine.
Yeah. This is
Get a
slow.
real
Just
operating
get your
system
laptop.
on there.
Bring it up
Yeah.
here.
Is there a?
Do you have a HDMI connector on your thing?
Or do you want to go?
I'm going to go sit in your spot and say a lot.
Plug this in, the light goes off. All right, where are we at?
Oh.
That doesn't.
Get in my left.
Yeah.
All right, so labels, architecture, labels, API. Ah, it looks like a Chromebook. All right. So architecture, privacy, and security considerations. Ready for text.
Yeah, Chris, this one has been ready for text for a very long time. And I think there's like 30 pings to me on this
Yes,
issue.
there are.
We should just sit down this week and do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, on Friday. Let's do it on Friday.
On Friday.
Great.
Yep, great.
It will happen on Friday.
Excellent. That is assigned to Chris
That's
and
the
Tommy.
joke.
Right. Define the server-side equivalent of racing. This is ready for text, even though I have no idea how the hell to do it.
Should we actually close this one? Because there was the PR from Teresa? No,
from PR number 9. Oh, no, that's a PR from Teresa on some code.
Oh, that's on code. Oh, I see.
Right.
Oh, wow. Thank you, GitHub.
Listing on multiple interfaces and addresses by default needs to be specified. I think for architecture, all we need to do is put like a line of text in there.
Yes.
For interface, we probably need to put a line of text in there, right? It's like you're not really racing anything. You're just listing on multiple things, and like whether or not one of those two things like injects delay for some reason is up to that. I don't think we should suggest to people that they do that.
Right.
So there's a line of text in each doc, and it's assigned to Tommy and Colin is confused.
Well, I'm frequently confused. I'm wondering, and of course I have read all these issues frequently and recently. I'm wondering how it relates to the rendezvous stuff.
I'm thinking.
Thinking we may need to think about this a little bit more to make sure we're not closing off the rendezvous stuff, which we know needs work.
Right. Let's punt on this one then. It's still assigned to the two of you. If we don't get a chance to talk about that this week, then let's try and do that before the next call. No, I got. Haha, the back button works. API needs a way to handle start TLS. This is assigned to me, even though it's still marked discuss.
Framers.
Tommy, now, actually, this is framer abuse.
Yeah, this is another one of the things where framers are gradually growing
Right.
bigger and bigger scope.
Well, I think that this discussion is actually what drove us to make the framers bigger, and then we made the framers smaller again. I, as the owner of this issue, am inclined to close it without further. Close it with a shrug. Or assign it to Jonathan, one of the two.
I'm certainly not going to write text for it.
Okay.
But so you're saying that there will not be a way for a TAPS using thing to do start TLS in a way that gets...
No, that's not what we're saying.
Okay.
What we're saying is that there won't be a way for TAPS to abstractly and generically represent an interface for defining start TLS like semantics at a layer other than the application layer. You can use a framer to hack it, but we're not going to put a protocol stack mutation hook into the architecture because start TLS is a stack mutation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this was, I use this as sort of like an instance of things that need to do stack mutation.
Right. And what I would say is that start TLS is an application. Sorry. And WebSockets is an application, right? The application modifies the stack, and that's a problem. But TAPS is more important doing stack selection at connection time than it is at mutation time. And you could possibly have an implementation specific thing that says, by the way, this stack is mutatable to this other stack, which is actually kind of implicit, right? All HTTP2 connections that look like they might have a WebSockets endpoint at them are mutatable to WebSockets. TAPS doesn't need to know it's not HTTP2.
Yeah. Also, all HTTP2 connections are hopefully mutatable to HTTP 1.1 connections, depending on what the server does.
Yeah, right. So, but this is all things that need to get bubbled up to the app. TAPS absolutely shouldn't be down in that space.
Yeah.
Unless we want to re-architect it, which we don't.
Right. Colin Perkins. I mean, TAPS is focused on the API looking down. And a lot of the confusion is because we're talking about concepts that happen within the implementation.
So, Tommy Pauly, Apple.
Singapore.
To the point, like this issue right now is labeled with Arc and API. And I certainly don't think we need text in the architecture for this.
Mm-hmm.
And with regards to the API, what we did with the framer to essentially modify the stack is that we pushed the details of how you do dynamic modification into the implementation.
Yeah.
And I think what is there is sufficient to do it. The only caveat there is that the implementation, unlike the other ones, is informational. And so it doesn't have any normative text saying that your TAPS implementation must give these hooks to let people do start TLS. I think in practice they will. But I would almost argue is a follow-on document that maybe we should start looking at standardizing implementations of protocol stacks and having like interoperable ones that we have defined with Yang models as a secondary activity after we get the core documents done. Yes, you can do start TLS in our API, so it works. So everything's good.
249 is now closed. Do we need a terminology section in architecture? Assigned to the entire work.
And actually, if we scroll down, I think the last question on here is like, wasn't this one like we thought we were done and we just need confirmation?
Why did I unassign Gory?
So, Miria, you opened this. Do you think we need more terminology than we have?
To Miria.
No, Miria opened it. My opinion is that essentially the back half of the document is terminology and definitions already, and we don't need another section.
Okay, this was Mia Kulevin. This was connected to another comment because it was sometimes a little bit hard to understand these terms when they show up the first time because they were not well defined. But now we have a little bit more of this overview section, so I think that actually fulfills the same task. So I'm okay with just like closing it.
Oh, good to close it. Okay, fine. While Brian's closing it, I promise to do a very detailed read through this with no prior understanding to see whether we define everything. So as soon as we publish the next rev.
And you're going to open a whole bunch of new issues, but it'll be great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
TAPS, Arch, textual review to notes, 25 March by Gory. Let's do that this week. There's no need to talk about that. Protocol stacks that are not equivalent have no space in our framework. Only protocol stacks are equivalent can be safely raced. Teresa, you want to talk to this one a little bit?
Yeah, so I read the architecture document before coming to this meeting, and I was kind of confused what we actually consider equivalent. I think we talked about this before, but in the architecture text, it's not really clear. So one interpretation is that if our application doesn't specify what it needs, like it says reliable, ignore, like I don't care if it's reliable or not, then TCP and UDP can be equivalent. And then the architecture says this is fine, and it says it's not fine. Like there's two different places where we talk about this.
Right, it looks like Phil has an actual specific remedy to this. Yeah, which is what PR 327 is all about. Did we land PR 327 like a month ago, or I mean, we either landed or we closed it because it's not the one open PR we have right now. And this was a change to the API doc. So okay, we just needed to go do some architecture cleanup. We'll sit down and take your suggestion. Hold on, I need to find the. Okay.
Also, Max Franke. Just real quick, we had a lot of discussion on the mailing list during Montreal, just to make sure so people know there's more than just on the issue.
Okay.
So the basic case was saying that if something matches the criteria selection properties specified by the application, it's considered equivalent. So if it's not, so TCP and UDP can be equivalent if the application doesn't care about any properties of the transport. But this but this is clearly not a problem of tabs, but a problem of an application just not specifying what it wants.
Right. So the real question is if the application specifies something stupid, that's not our problem, right? It is up to the implementers to decide whether or not they want to be permissive or restrictive on that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's defaults as well, right? Like so, and pretty much everyone is going to have their default be, yeah, here you get TCP because that's probably what you meant.
Yeah, so I think we should assign somebody for that. And then also another thing, that's why I wanted security discussed first. So right now equivalent says, oh, and it needs to be like the same transports and the same security protocol. And yeah. Oh.
Someone needs to be assigned.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually and I would say, so please add that note on security in the issue. And I'd say since you have a lot more context on security than I do, that it's probably actually that was almost a joke assigning you when you said someone should be assigned, but I think you're actually the right person to do it. So there.
So I guess, Jonathan, the question I'd have is, are HTTP 1.1 and HTTP 2 or HTTP 2 and HTTP 3 equivalent?
Yes.
But just because we say they are?
Because they mutate to each other.
But I mean, so obviously some of them can do multiplexing and some of them can't. So why are they equivalent?
If the application doesn't ask for it, then it doesn't matter, right? Like you can have a multiplexing protocol stand in for a non-multiplexing protocol, right?
Right.
I mean, that's how upgrade works.
So looking through this again, I think Philip's point that it's mainly point 1 that needs clarification of text is absolutely correct, because the other points are much clearer in saying that like both things must offer the transport services as required by the application.
Yep.
And so essentially you must also have the same application features, such as multiplexing, as required by the application. If you don't require them, the fact that H2 has multiplexing you don't care about doesn't matter. So
an implementation could even choose to say, oh, we don't have multiplexing, so we make a connection pool of TCP connections and use this pool for the multiplexing. This would also be considered equivalent.
So events versus callbacks for security relevant asynchrony. Oh yeah, so this is basically the architecture talks about events, but then the interface talks about events and callbacks. And it uses events for things that happen asynchronously and callbacks for things that happen because a security association event happened, right? And the should be explicitly specify this so it's not confusing. And I think we should actually have both because a callback is different than an event. A callback is a hey, yes, right. Yeah. An event is something that doesn't have a context that you pass to it, and a callback is. And callbacks are very common sort of in the like APIs that provide security that we're going to be building on top of. Yeah, there's a lot of yes. There's I think I put a ready for text tag on this, and I think I was right. Oh, no, I did not, but let's do that now. And I'll assign myself since damn it, that's not what I have to do. Thank you, GitHub. Labels, discuss. Ready for text. Assign yourself. Good, I'm logged in as me. Okay. So I'll just write that.
Yeah, Chris Wood, thank you. Please keep them separate.
Yes.
Treating everything as an event has led to like very bad API in the past.
Yeah.
That has bitten me personally many times. So keep them separate.
Cool. Yeah. So the problem is right now is like we keep them separate in the API, and in the architecture we just sort of like don't say anything, and that was what was confusing, right? Like we're not talking about blending them together. We're talking about like raising it to this is an architecture level thing, and it's there for reasons, right? And that's what I'm going to do.
Colin Perkins. Yes, I agree. Be careful how you phrase this, because both event and callback have lots of different meanings to lots of different people and lots of different programming languages and operating systems.
Yep.
So let's avoid confusing people.
Yep. I think we will not be successful in avoiding confusing people, because people, it turns out, are extremely confusable, but we will try. Okay, so we're done with the architecture issue scrub.
So time check, Tommy, how much time do you need for your presentation? Because we have like 20 minutes. So
How many issues do we have right now?
we have a lot of issues.
But almost all of them are marked ready for text.
Yeah.
Okay.
And almost all of them are yours.
Which ones aren't Tommy?
Which ones aren't Tommy's? Who is this person? That's yours. Explicit protocol selection. That is future work, which we're just going to go ahead and close.
So Tommy is still waiting. How much time do you need?
I think
The rest is be assigned here.
Yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 in here that I want to hit on. So
let's
can I have 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So
we
we're
have
gonna
10
spend
minutes.
10 minutes on this.
So you're going to skip the ready for text because you're just going to write the text?
We're going to skip the ready for text because, Tommy and I are going to write text, and then Jake is going to write text. And Jake, you actually have written some text for that. You have a pending PR. And Chris is going to write text. And right, okay, we already talked about that one. Property for address privacy, Tommy. Oh, do you want to talk about this one, Tommy? This seems pretty straightforward. Yes.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah,
This one's ready for text. Then more expressive multipath transport property. So,
Ryan, for the private, for specifying the private stuff, we need to make sure that is visible to the rendezvous stuff.
Yeah. So private
that WebRTC.
Private and rendezvous is going to be difficult. No. Yeah.
Yes, but we look at what WebRTC did.
Right. Okay.
We just need to make sure it's visible. So
Yep.
so make sure it's tagged with rendezvous somehow, so we remember it.
This says it's ready for text, Tommy. You put that label on it. This is more expressive multipath transport property. You're actually, do you believe that? Okay, cool. Failure of unsatisfiable configurations. I don't agree that that's actually a thing that we want to do. Right, like, so, yeah, it's up to the implementation when it checks for so we can close it. That was easy. What? So this is basically about specifying when the system makes the choice that you handed it a bunch of constraints that it can't satisfy, and it's, you know, whether or not the system decides to fail before or after you initiate is an implementation detail.
Right. As the person who filed the Max Franke, as the person who filed the issue, I also agree it should be closed.
Okay.
I agree it should be closed, but
Sorry,
I think there's a minor
clarification.
Implementations may find better interoperability across applications using different systems if they do have it fail later, as we said here, because you can imagine that something that on one platform is unsatisfiable condition is satisfiable on other platforms, and so it's kind of a weird assumption to make, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I mean, unsatisfiable now and unsatisfiable later are not necessarily the same thing.
Right,
Do we not want an implementation to be able to sort of create a precondition, hold on to it for a while, and then at some point later try and initiate it, even though it may not succeed?
Well, so
now,
one
but it will later on.
thing that might happen, there are two things that could happen, right? You could end up with a path that you can use a transport protocol on or a stack on that you couldn't before, or you could install a loadable kernel module that gives you SCTP support. And I think that we probably want the implementation to handle the first one gracefully, and you get extra credit points if you handle the second one gracefully, but we don't expect it. And in either case, I think this is not something that we need to specify at the API level, right? Like, so when the thing fails, doesn't need to be part of the contract. The API does currently specify that there are two ways it can fail. It can either, return an error when you try to instantiate the thing, right? I would like unreliable UDP, or no, wait, that works. I would like unreliable TCP, right? That works too, but it's a hack. Right, I know, you built it. It's awesome. But we have to wait for the install the loadable kernel module event to happen, right? Right. Yeah. So yeah, we're moving on. Clarification on queued receives. Tommy, you were nominated to write this by Michael because you probably already have a solution for this. Because if you don't, then people are complaining to you because it happens quite a while. So Involts assigned himself and then unassigned himself, which is like it's like, hey, let's do this together.
It was misclicking and things keeping track of the history of misclicks.
So I think this is good, and I think
okay.
Tommy, do you know what to do here?
Yeah, I have a theory on why the last comment from Max probably is a non-issue, but I think that is just something to take offline and settle.
Because we're almost done here. We are getting default values. Wait, hold on. Yeah. Default values. Oh, how much time do you want for your thing?
This is very quick.
Yeah.
It looks long. So this is just me copying everything because Gori said we should talk about defaults. And after looking at the long list, there's only one thing that he took an issue with. And I guess that's worth having a short discussion about. It's only the last thing here.
Okay.
Everything else he was fine with. So.
Yay! Only one thing appears unexpected. Parallel use of multiple paths. Default prefer. Yeah, I think. Do you want to default ignore or default avoid? I don't think we want default ignore.
I knew I'd written this, but I have absolutely no idea what it says.
Okay. Yeah, so there's text here that basically makes a generalization. This will improve performance, achieving greater throughput, which is not supported by the research. It's not supported by the research in situations where they were trying to actually make it work on favorable paths, and it's certainly not supported by the research when one of your paths that you're going to get your axe across is actually a tin can. So I think this is default ignore. Does anyone disagree? Okay. So we literally are typing more text. We're interacting more with GitHub than we will with the editor to make this happen. But good. Yeah, I'll do it. I will do the easy one. Sorry, Michael. I can assign you a hard one.
I was gonna volunteer for the tiniest possible.
You know what? You know what? We'll do this one together. Yeah. All right, we're good. Hey, that's me. Look, I do some stuff. Go back. Go back. We're down to 10 minutes, and we've actually finished the architecture and API scrubs, and I think that's a pretty good. I feel pretty good about that achievement. All right, thanks a lot. Do you need to plug the?
I'll do the same GitHub thing. I will use it. I have the presentation here, and then I will GitHub.
This microphone by the chair.
Oh, okay. All right. So in our last 10 minutes, just going over the implementation document. So I will want to go through some of the issues, but first I do want to refresh people on what we're doing here, because we actually have gotten a fair amount done in the recent couple months, and I think it's the right direction. And so it should make us a little bit more optimistic about actually getting this document done in our aggressive schedule. Yeah, I'm telling people. So recent changes, we updated the terminology for our API mappings. This is mainly thanks to Michael for going through and using kind of the official names that we came up with for what are the transport features, and actually saying, hey, by the way, remember these other documents we did? So all of this TAPS API actually uses those mappings and defines those. So I think that was a really strengthening thing, and it shows that we actually learned something. So woo! We also added text for defining our mappings for SCTP. So again, thank you very much for writing that. And then we also scrubbed the terminology to make sure it matches what API has become. I think a lot of what's going to remain for this document is that type of work of just aligning it with the others and making sure that it's a cohesive set. So we also got some error reasons appendix. That was, I think, from Max, so thank you for doing that. I moved the message framer over from API into implementation. So that's where we stuff our start TLS hacks. So that's good. We have, I think it was from Philip, we got some text around pooled connections. And then we have a start on referencing existing implementations. I think we want to fill that a little bit more, but essentially say this is where we got this background from. I think that is appropriate for this document. And it will just want, so essentially anyone who has been working on this, I know we have PyTaps, we have our implementation, we have the work that was done in Neat. Exactly. And I don't know if there's other work that we want to highlight from the PostSockets efforts when Brian and Mary were doing with students, but anything there that we want to add in, please do that in the next couple months.
Tommy,
yes.
Gary Fairhurst.
Yes.
How would you see that added? I mean, what are you thinking of?
So there is a section that was added in there that kind of lists the implementations. And I think just kind of saying, yeah, this is the work they did. This is the scope of the types of racing they did, how they exposed the API. That would be useful.
So read implementation and add a paragraph or something to that blob.
Yes, fill out that blob. That'd be great. Thank you. So I wanted to just kind of get a slide out here, and you can, we can go offline and do this, but just when you zoom out to just the kind of outline of the document of what we're doing, the goal is to be very parallel to the lists of things that we have in architecture and in API, and just saying, here's how you implement these things, and let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. So we have, what are these objects? How do we do connection establishment? I think this is the biggest section with all the racing work. We have sending, receiving data that includes Framer now, connection management, connection termination, caching. And then that last section is the specific transport protocols. And this is where we go and we use the formal mappings that we've defined previously in TAPS to say, and here's how these things all play out. We discussed different ways of doing it, of scattering those mappings throughout the document or having them all aggregate in one place. And what we ended up with is deciding that we want them in one place so that if someone is going and implementing TCP in their TAPS implementation, they can see, here's how I do that one. They can focus on that protocol. If you have other opinions, please write an issue, speak up.
Jonathan, my only concern is that this is an informational document, and that part feels normative to me. Mappings? Yeah, mappings.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I'm not sure how normative we can get with the mappings because the different implementations could choose to interpret things differently. That could be work that we want to do in future documents of trying to have, like, again, interoperable Yang models for these things.
Yeah, Gori first. I think the mappings are more they're still abstract. They're not concrete. So it makes it not normative to me.
Okay.
Michael, that's a +1. I mean, it's just a reference back to the RFC that has the functionality to say you could use that to implement that.
Okay.
So it's explaining something, not more.
Sure. Jonathan, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of disagree because, I mean, the fact that, clone on TCP means open a new connection, whereas clone on an SCTP channel means a new channel and not a new connection is kind of fundamental. That if two implementations disagree on what those things mean, then they're, not doing this. They're not doing the same thing. And as an implementer, I need to know what happens when I call these APIs, or otherwise they're just, don't mean anything.
Yeah, I get that point. That makes sense. Brian, did you want to comment on that?
So I kind of like the fact that the implementation draft is informational.
I do too.
I like it a lot. And I think that what we've bubbled up here is something that needs to come back. We did such a good job of closing all the API issues, but I think this might be an API issue. That we essentially say, hey, look, certain transport protocol stacks have this feature, and this clone thing, I think we need to kind of bind it a little bit more tightly because Jonathan's right. But I don't want to do it here.
The other option we have, because I'm not sure if it's really API as well, is to split them out. And we've talked about this before, of saying these mappings of TAPS interfaces to specific protocols that we've defined elsewhere are separate documents.
Okay.
And it's almost like a registry of it.
Yeah.
And those can be normative. And we essentially just split this chunk out of the document, and
I like that
better.
better.
We let the core 3 documents go, and then we potentially talk about bringing into scope of the charter, doing formal mappings, and then it allows us to have a template on which we can do formal mappings for Quick as it continues to evolve.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Okay. So we may want to open an issue to kind of de-scope text here. So let's take that to the list a bit.
Let's take that to the list. I think there needs to be a little bit more discussion about that because it's like, hey, another document. But
okay, great. Okay,
so the conclusion is like you're going to check on the mailing list.
Yeah, I think we want to have an issue and also a thread about it.
Yeah, I want to add one comment on that. So I hear a lot of people saying already, like, TAPS is so complicated, and like that's the reason why I don't want to use it, right? And taking the more concrete stuff out of here and delaying it further might actually give the wrong impression.
So I think that we should have this discussion on the list with more time.
2 minutes.
Yeah. So I just want to highlight what we do have as issues right now. Some of these are cross-listed. So we already have the pull request for multicast stuff. That's great. This is the issue just to finish filling out the implementations. We already talked about that. So please do that. This is going to require all of us to help. Structure is essentially what we just discussed. And I think this is kind of the one niggly bit that's left open. We're working on the privacy considerations. The last one I want to highlight is kind of this proxying stuff. We had mentioned. Is that you? Yeah. We still have 30 seconds left. So we have. Yes, thank you. So we do have the issue around specifying how much we do proxies. We do have this. I think we can close this at this point. But Tom was assigned. I think he had talked about doing stuff on this. I don't think he's here or. Yeah. So he had been assigned to help look at some stuff about. We essentially do have text about what you do with proxies. We don't have any text about what you would do with Tor, but I think we can leave that out. Okay, great. So let's close that. That's the one I wanted to get confirmation we can close. Boom, done. All right. So I think the main thing out of this is we should have a good discussion on the list about the concrete mappings. Yes. So the time that we've arranged is Friday morning, like essentially the side meeting session time, like the 8:30 to 10 on Friday.
On Friday.
So you book the room and then put it in a
There's
mailing
no
list?
room. We can try to get a room.
Friday going? Can somebody get a room and send a note to us? Yes, send a note to us. Maria?
Mia Kulevin, can I open a new issue?
So we don't have time there, so open it and get a GitHub, I guess. But
I just want to get a quick sense of the room. Like while I was reading web transports, right, I noticed that we say very little about LAP.
Blue list, another one?
PN. Do we need to say more about this? Should I put an issue in?
Please file an issue on TLS repo. I mean, no, this is complicated, right? I mean, you were in quick this morning. This is complicated.
What we need is maybe note that this is a transport specific option that you want to use potentially.
So the problem is that ALPN is a stack identifier that the stewards of ALPN do not understand as a stack identifier, and will probably violently resist. You're the closest thing we have to security guy in the room, right? So it's your fault. And I get the sense they will violently resist being told that, even though it's true. So that's a bigger, longer, uglier discussion. We can file an issue on file an issue.
What's our answer for people who say, like, I want to use tabs and I want to use LAPN and I need an interface for it? What's the answer?
So if we look at the way that we have it in our implementation, I think with the others, you have a protocol-specific option that when you configure the protocol TLS, you configure ALPN. ALPN is defined only for the scope of TLS, and none of our API or architecture documents give, like, saying this is an API that exists only for this specific protocol, and the architecture specifically says, like, that's not a thing that you do in the generic TAPS interface. That belongs to the protocol-specific options. The implementation draft could maybe mention it, but we don't go into the details of TLS mappings there. So maybe this is another document. Maybe we have in our split off normative documents about how you map TLS, you say you offer this option.
So one thing we could do maybe to solve it is to use that as an example, because we have some examples and then it would be clear to anyone reading it.
I think that would be great. I'm still asking, should I open an issue? Yes.
Let the minutes show. Miriam's going to open an issue. Thank you to our minute takers who worked overtime.
Thank you.
And folks who want to participate in the discussion further, which will show up Friday morning at 8:30 in the room to be revealed.
On the mailing list, right?
Hi, how are you?
All right, QARG in here?
Yeah.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah. And I was here to sit in and see what's going on in this transport area stuff, which I don't know anything about. And